This is ChangeMakers with Katie Goar, finding the right solutions for the affordable housing community.
This week's Changemaker is Lisa Gutierrez, the Senior Vice President and Director of Business Development for Affordable Housing at U.S. Bank, where she leads a team dedicated to transforming communities through innovative financing solutions. With 20 years' experience in affordable housing and commercial real estate, Lisa has been recognized as a 2023 inductee into the California Housing Consortium's Hall of Fame for her significant contributions to advancing affordable housing. Lisa, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks so much for having me, Katie.
You and I have traveled in several circles here, and I've been very impressed with what you're doing in several avenues. So I'm so excited to have you as a guest. It's a pleasure having you here.
Yes, thanks so much. I love the opportunity to talk about the affordable housing industry and all the great work that's out there.
Let's start talking about your career. You are leading a national multi-fund investing team at U.S. Bank. Let's start. What is that field like, and what is your leadership role there? Just kind of explain a little bit about what you do.
Yes. So here at U.S. Bancorp Impact Finance, I lead the affordable housing business development team. That includes 5 equity originators and 4 debt originators. It also includes a team that's focused on our multi-investor fund investments in the affordable housing space. This really is the upfront, I'd say, sales team of our affordable housing team. These are folks out there looking for opportunities to either lend or invest to affordable housing.
Okay, so I love hearing this. They are looking for opportunities to lend money for affordable housing. Lots of people think that there are obstacles to developing affordable housing, and they usually blame financing. So walk us through what that myth is not looking like for you and your team then.
Yeah, I mean, at U.S. Bank, we've been lending and investing in affordable housing for over 30 years. So we are not new to this space and have developed many relationships with affordable housing developers, as well as developing new relationships with new entrants to the market every day. This includes developers bringing us in, usually on the early front of when they're going to need financing for a development. We're able to kind of work with them, be able to assess projects along the way, assess budgets, as well as, expenses and income projections. And really, it's been, we've been very successful in this space because of the relationships we've built with our clients over the years, and being a trusted advisor over time. Not just in and out of the market, really been, true and tried partner in affordable housing for many years.
Do you have specific target markets, or are you just kind of everywhere across the U.S.?
We are lending and investing across the United States. Obviously, we are a bank, so we do have markets that we focus on from a Community Reinvestment Act perspective. And those are markets that, where we have large deposit and market share in those specific markets. But we have developments, both debt and equity opportunities that we work on across the country.
What is the scale of units we're talking about here? Do you have a total number that you guys are achieving, or maybe even a goal number, what you want to achieve?
Yeah, so I can talk a little bit about what we've done since inception. U.S. Bancorp Impact Finance has provided about $14.78 billion nationwide in affordable housing debt, including $6.8 billion in California. And in equity since inception, we've provided $18.16 billion in affordable housing equity investments, and $4.56 billion of that is here in California, my home state. So something that we are very proud of over the past 30 plus years, in really making a name for ourselves in this affordable housing lending and investment space.
So this is really impressive, because a lot of times people want to make the banks the bad guys, but you guys actually have the tool by which you're delivering some of this. Give us your approach to how you do some of those partnerships you were mentioning and those relationships? Like what's the strategy there by which you approach these things?
Yeah, I think our team is really active across the board, whether it's, from the day-to-day work and finding opportunities to lend and invest, but also leaning into our industry from a policy and advocacy perspective. And that's where we meet our development clients across the board. I think it's important to note that we lend and invest across the spectrum from deeply affordable development serving individuals at extremely low incomes to workforce housing serving everyday residents such as teachers, public safety workers, and just trying to add as many places for folks to call home because there's many folks out nationwide that are rent burdened individuals and families, and we're just trying to find a way to house more folks.
What are some of those creative approaches that you use to make it more affordable or accessible? Like, is there a specific, without giving us too much of their secret sauce here, is there like a specific approach that you guys use?
I wouldn't say there is a specific approach, but there is a specific program here at the bank that we are particularly proud of, which is our Access Commitment Initiative. It's a long-term approach to closing the wealth gap for underserved communities, including communities of color. And it really redefines how we serve employees, clients, and communities. And through Access Commitment, we believe that we're making measurable change. So specific to the affordable housing group, we have our Affordable Housing Impact Capital Program, which we launched in 2022. And it's an approved special purpose credit program, a $250 million tax credit equity and debt fund aimed to supporting emerging developers of color. So, Katie, when I think about the affordable housing industry, lending and investing, there's many folks that do this in the market, but there's not a lot of folks who can kind of innovate and also meet the market where it's at, which is really lending and investing to emerging developers of color and trying to find a way to serve these developers who are working deeply within the communities that they've been living and trying to serve the community for so long. So I think that's something that when I think about U.S. Bancorp Impact Finance, that's something that we are particularly proud of putting in place over the last few years.
That is phenomenal. Can you speculate how many developers, or what's your metric there? Like, is it quantity or is it the dollars, that the $250 million? What are your success metrics that you're seeing?
We have been really working towards kind of building a bench. So we have a handful of folks that we've worked with thus far. Since it's 2022 is when we launched it, but I can tell you that we are on track to really meet our goals over the next 3 years.
I applaud your efforts. I mean, this is truly one of the ways that you can both accomplish affordable housing, but like you said, you can start building in some real economic wealth and some expertise. What were some of the initial challenges, or maybe even challenges that you're still seeing when you try to structure some of these deals?
Yeah, I think it just really takes a thoughtful approach. I think what we want to do is make sure that we are providing enough time, insight, thought, and really being there, again, like I said, as a trusted advisor along the way in the various benchmarks of development, not really trying to just get a final package from that developer and taking a look at the project and whether we're going to lend or invest. This is really coming in from the very beginning, whether that developer has even gone to the state to get their, various layers of funding available, being there from that front part of the conversation and being able to add value along the way has been a key success to the program.
I'm curious, you also have some advocacy components here, and maybe advocacy is not the right word here that you guys use, but what are you seeing is the financial landscape for projects right now?
Yeah, I think that there are many challenges facing affordable housing. I'll talk a little bit about, from at the state level, there are funding shortages, but we're making, good progress and need to continue to find ways to stretch state dollars, federal dollars with innovative funding sources and attract new investors into the affordable housing tax credit space. And, that's one thing. If you hear me on a panel out there, I'll always say we welcome new entrants to the affordable housing investment space, and we all need to continue with the storytelling about projects and developments that we are involved in order to kind of attract new entrants into the space. I'd also say that innovations in housing to drive development costs down. Cost is an issue. We've seen the cost per unit increase substantially since I got into this business in 2006. We've seen the cost per unit go from $250,000 per unit to build housing all the way up to, in some coastal markets, over $1 million cost per unit. So however we can find ways to build housing quicker, more sustainable, and in a lower cost fashion, I think is something that we definitely need to employ upon ourselves within the affordable housing space. Another thing is entitlements, especially in those coastal markets. The entitlements process at all levels is a challenge for developers. And so fast tracking affordable housing approvals and finding a way to focus on the housing without adding many layers of approval and requirements can get housing built faster. It'll save on pre-development costs, and it'll also increase housing supply exponentially. Insurance is big, and we'll definitely need to work together collectively as an industry to lobby for insurance costs to go down, and just keep telling those stories. Maintenance, we just went through a period of COVID where in-unit inspections and maintenance at developments kind of was put on hold for 1 to 3 years. And so really kind of going in now and seeing what we have and being able to do that maintenance at the project level, that's adding additional costs because some of that has kind of added up over the years. Administrative expense. And then the biggest one is resident services. I think when you're trying to find a way to fund resident services through real estate, rental income, that serves to be a challenge, especially when you're dealing with the special needs, developments, formerly homeless, folks living with mental illness, veterans. That's something that is definitely an ongoing issue, that resident services budget is continuing to grow, and we need to find a way in order to try to find a permanent source for that funding of resident services.
Yeah, there seems to be like a theoretical or conceptual divide here, whether people are just building houses or whether they're actually also trying to meet the needs of the person in the house. I don't know. I guess I would venture to say that there's been so much emphasis on just building, and maintaining that as an industry, we haven't really embraced some of those other dynamics of what's going on. And, we want to have that long-term sustainability. So it's an interesting policy shift, if you will, of that conversation, isn't it?
It is. I think we have so many smart individuals in this industry who have been, working in affordable housing for 20 years. And then we have folks that have entered our space that have been here in the last 2 to 3 years, bringing a lot of thought leadership and innovation, especially when it comes to kind of building, unit types, unit makeup. So I'm hopeful that we can find some of the solutions to some of these issues.
Given your experience with tax credit, I'm just curious, you've seen a lot of state and local programs and probably partnerships. Do you see various programs more effective in addressing the housing crisis? Or I know that's a big, broad brush question here, but given your experience of what you've seen, are there definite things that need to be amplified, either within the tax credit or maybe you've seen something at the state and local level?
Yeah, most definitely. I think the biggest winner that we have seen over the last couple of years is various states rolling out new state tax credit programs. This has been a game changer for example, states like Arizona, states like Colorado, where you had unused bond capital sitting on the table, and we weren't using that towards affordable housing because there wasn't other soft subordinate funds in order to be paired up to make the capital stack work. And these state tax credit programs have been a game changer, all the way to the point where the bond cap in Arizona I think they're finally going to hit their limit this year in issuing bonds, which I think, that's a double-edged sword, right? The program was successful, more units are getting built, but then there's still a need for housing, and there's still lots of developments that are going to stand in line and wait for that bond cap to be available. But without those state tax credit programs, that has been, you haven't been able to use that bond cap. So that's been a huge win for the industry.
Are there any trends within the multifamily housing as far as innovations that you're excited about or that you're seeing as well?
I think we're continuing to watch kind of building innovation, I'd say. The modular space has really taken off. And I think that we've definitely we're starting to see the success of the, modular developments, especially if you're building in a place that you're trying to, you're racing to the clock on weather in cool temperatures, or just speed to market to get more units on the ground quicker. I also think that there's been a lot of innovation in workforce housing. We've seen some new entrants, mostly in the tech space. You're seeing Amazon and Microsoft and others come to the market, most specifically in markets where they have a lot of employees, and putting dollars into affordable housing, with levels of affordability, from 50 and 60% annual median income, all the way up to 80% annual median income. So it's also serving a need for that workforce type development.
You're also starting to see hospitals and certain orgs like that, nonprofits, larger nonprofits being coming into the space to build as well, which is, I think, exciting and inspiring too.
I think so too. And I think definitely for, they've seen the success of housing individuals, especially in that formerly homeless or special needs population. They've seen the success of, having folks have access to safe, clean, affordable housing is keeping them out of the, chronic healthcare system and in hospitals. And I think that that's great, that because they're seeing that success, they're wanting to go all in and help as well.
And you've done your part in helping transform communities, which has earned you some well-deserved accolades. We'll discuss this more in the second part of our conversation. Coming up on ChangeMakers, Lisa Gutierrez, Senior Vice President and Director of Business Development for Affordable Housing at U.S. Bank, shares her insight about the Women's Affordable Housing Network and its vital role to the industry.
Just to bounce ideas off of folks, I think, especially other women who have probably gone through maybe a similar point in the road where they needed to pick, from one direction or not, and being able to have that insight while you're making those important decisions, I think is amazing.
Thanks for listening to ChangeMakers with Katie Goar. To find out more about Katie, go to quadel.com. That's QUADEL.com. This has been a production of Forbes Books Radio.